So welcome to those who have joined us. Just going to start in about a minute here. Just waiting on the last couple, and we'll get going. All right. So welcome. First and foremost, thank you all for joining tonight. I love seeing some engaged parents that want information, that want to have discussion, and that want to just dive a bit deeper within their child's youth sporting activities. So thank you for setting aside this bit of time. It's really good to connect with you. At the end, there'll be all of my contact details. So if you have any further questions, if you have concerns, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out at any time. So how I'd like to structure tonight is I'm all on my own. So I am going to play moderator. I'm going to play presenter. I'm going to play host, a number of different roles. So if things are a little choppy, please forgive me. We are going to record tonight so that this can be used later on as well for material and for reflection. So if you have any objection to that, please let us know. So yeah, welcome. Let's go. Without further ado, so I wanted to start off tonight just with some conversation objectives and just what are we actually going to be getting out of tonight. So really wanted to get across the process that CMSA has gone through to determine some of the modifications that we're going to be using this year, and also going to get into what those modifications actually are. But then really the key component is the why. So really trying to understand why we're doing this, why we're moving in this direction, and why it's going to be beneficial. And then lastly, just supporting your child through these modifications. I want to make a big disclaimer that this is all COVID cooperating, right? We have plan B, plan C kind of in our back pocket right now, but this is best case scenario and the direction that we want to be moving in. So away we go. There we go. So I'm Jordan Stewart. I am the CMSA Technical Leader. It's a new position that CMSA has created. And they've brought me on to have a bit of a technical mind on the staff and to allow for someone who's an expert within player development to have a voice at the table in structuring this district and structuring the league offering as well. I've coached players from U8 all the way through to university. I've worked in loads of different environments, and my former role was with Alberta Soccer as the regional coach South and the Alberta Rex director. The Rex program, which was a phenomenal program for the girls. It was the youth national team pathway for the female players within each of the provinces. So while I was working with ASA, my kind of core portfolios of work were around player development, district outreach, so helping rural districts or smaller districts, and then also helping in the coach education. So I got a good wide breadth of experiences and knowledge there that I hope to bring to CMSA. I've got experience working in just about every single organization or every level of the game that's in Canada, from grassroots clubs, which your kids play at, to pro academies at FC Edmonton, the PSO at Alberta Soccer, youth national team development system and some youth national team camps, college and university, and then also community outreach, so the free footy program in Edmonton. I don't want to spend all night talking about me though, because I want to get into some of the good stuff. So first I wanted to walk you through a bit of the process that we went through in terms of modifying this league. And I know the font might be a little bit small, but the first step was to examine, what are we really doing? What's going on? Is it long-term player development focused? And is it Canada Soccer club licensing ready? So I'll get into a little bit more of that. Then we noticed some gaps. So we researched what best practice could be to fill in some of those gaps. We consulted loads of researchers and experts. We connected with other national sporting organizations, districts, other sports. I consulted all over the place. And then what I realized is we need to actually tailor this to fit Calgary's needs. We can't just copy and paste solutions from around the world or from basketball or from volleyball or any other sport. We need to really make sure that it fits within Calgary's needs and within this player pool's needs as well. And then we want to implement, and that's kind of where we are right now. So we're at this implement stage here, and we want to make sustainable and positive change within what we're doing. So we've consulted with the local club leaders on many of the modifications, and we're ready to try and get going and to implement these things. So first off, examine what are we actually doing. So I started out very basic. I said, how many players are playing soccer in Calgary, right? And so what we see here from the graph is our U7 to U9 numbers skyrocketed from 2017 to 2019 in outdoor. And a lot of that is due to clubs declaring their in-house community players, as well as their CMSA registered players. And then we look through to U10, to U13, U15, U17, U19. And I've kind of grouped them a little bit by age and stage based around LTPD. And there's some startling trends. This is not just soccer alone, this is sport in general, but there's some worrisome trends here in terms of reduced registration, reduced enrollment, reduced activity, and from a global lens, we could be walking into a kind of health crisis if this continues. And I'm not talking about a virus that's wreaking havoc all over the world. I'm talking about a public health crisis. And how do we keep kids engaged? So this is purely just based on retention of all players. And then I said, well, what about the elite pathway? I'm going to use elite with air quotes around it. How are we doing there? And these numbers are about 9 years old now, but they're about the most recent that I could dig up. And at the time, Canada had loads of registered youth players in comparison to many of the other CONCACAF nations. But we only had 150 professional players. And we actually ranked 10th in the world at the time at total youth players. And there's technical directors from other countries in the world that wish they had the number of players that Canada has. And statistically, we're actually the worst out of all of the G20 nations in the world at developing soccer players, elite level professional players. We're the worst in the industrialized world. So that made me think, are we doing really, really well just on the grassroots retention area? Meh, probably not really. And are we doing really, really well on the elite stream? The competitive, the talented, the gifted, the ultra, mega, super elite, XYZ acronym, adjective player in this country, and especially in our local environment as well? And my answer would be no. I don't think that we are doing a great job. I think we do an okay job, but I don't think we're doing as good a job as we can do. So this kind of propelled the why. And a lot of what I've done and a lot of what I've taken is straight from research, best practice research that is sound, that is well documented. And if you want any of the papers afterwards, please contact me. I'm more than willing to pass them out. But within this sports sector, the youth sports sector, changes are occurring just based on the concern that the current structures and programs do not facilitate providing sport for all or developing elite athletes. So if it's not, we need to think, are we going to keep doing the same thing that we've always been doing? Because that is insanity. Or are we going to look to change? And so I'd welcome you to open up the chat box here and write a few comments. More than willing to wait. But if you had a blank canvas, if you could blow up this entire system that we operate in right now, and if you could redesign it, what would you redesign? So feel free to populate the chat box a little bit. We can have a little discussion around it as well. But what would you redesign it? Would you redesign it to its current state? Because that's the main question. If we're not going to redesign it to where we're at now, then we need to change and modify some things. So feel free. What would you do? I'll give you about a minute. Love it. Already had a message come in around better coaching development. 100% agree. 100% agree that the coach development in this system, or in this country, in this local environment, is lacking. That we need to, and I'm going to take this role on myself with Calgary Minor Soccer, is to mentor coaches, to help them get better, because better coaches are going to equal better players. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So we would have some sort of coach development, coach education, coach mentorship kind of initiative and program put in place to help the game. Totally agree. Is there anyone else that would like to populate the chat at all? Because I'm taking the silence as, okay, maybe this guy's onto something. Maybe there has to be some changes. So what does that look like? I'm gonna give, oh, great, another one. Someone just said, what is the current structure? This is my first year with the developmental league. Amazing question. Amazing question. We can get into that a little bit more. No one, and the first comment in there said, oh boy, I'm out of my league here. No one's out of our league. If anything, you are the parenting experts. I've got a 10-month-old. That's it. I'm new to this whole parenting thing. But I've been doing this coaching thing for a long time. So I might ask you, what would you do as a parent? And then steal all of that information and use it selfishly for myself. So I'm going to keep moving. So if we're not going to redesign it the same way, then something has to change. And so I looked for some historical examples of change. Smoking on airplanes. I haven't seen that in a long time in my whole life. Every airplane that I've taken, every travel, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen Coca-Cola marketed as an intellectual beverage that cures headaches, hysteria, and melancholy. I haven't seen that. So something's changed there, even in our diet. And then on the right-hand side, I just took a road trip with my 10-month-old and listened to him scream for 5.5 out of 7 hours. I wish he could have been sleeping like that, but he's stuck in his car seat being restrained. So things change. Things change for the better. And I love this diagram. This diagram's from Visualize Value, which on Twitter, if you don't follow them, please do. They've got some really powerful visuals, and you'll see a few more throughout the presentation. But on the left-hand side, it centers around a quote by Ferdinand Porsche. And it's change is easy. It's improvement that's the difficult part. So we can change things as much as we want, but I want to improve this system. I want to make sure that when I leave my chair and someone else fills it, that I've left the game in Calgary in a better place. I've made it better for the kids, for the parents, for the clubs, for the coaches, for the referees, for everyone involved in the game. I want to make it better. And that's where I'm operating on the right-hand side. Great. So a little quick video for you. Centering around change and improvement. I've sped up this part of the video because I didn't want to waste our time tonight. But trust me, they're not moving that quick. This is at about 4 times speed on the video. Fast forward decades. So there's something there. There's something there about change and improvement and how we as humans and we as a civilization make everything better. We just continue to make things better. And that's what we're trying to do here. So I use this model by Simon Sinek. If anyone's read Start With Why, phenomenal book. And this is kind of how we started to mold things, is we really got into why we're doing things, why things are done. And that's at the core of everything that we do. We ask really hard questions internally of the staff, and we say, why is this done this way? Why isn't it done that way? And we ask hard questions all the time. And if we start with that, what it tends to do is it tends to lead us in the right direction. And that why all brought us back down into the four-corner model and what's best for the player. My personal beliefs are that the four-corner model isn't actually that adequate. And I stole this from Dan Abrahams and tweaked it a little bit, but it's about, if we put the mental, social, and emotional corner right at the beginning of everything we do, from coaching to refereeing to officiating to supporting our children on the car ride home, that actually fuels the technical, tactical, and physical corners. Because when I woke up this morning at 5 a.m., I felt drained. But I got to see my 10-month-old again, and mentally, I was up for it. Yes, great, let's go. Let's go play. Let's go read some books. Let's try and climb onto the coffee table again like you have been, right? So there was a fuel there, and that mental fueled my physical being this morning. And wrapped up in all of that, and kind of engulfing it, is the culture that we actually surround the player in. So the culture around our home life, our club life, our competition, all of that plays into how this child feels, and then that spurs the other outcomes in terms of performance. And that leads to participation, progression, and performance at the end of the day. And without participation, we don't get performance. And I want to acknowledge this, that this essentially is the ecosystem that we operate in. It's multidimensional, it's complex. When one entity makes a decision, it affects a lot of other components. And this dark ring around the top is purely that culture that we operate in, and how the culture even here influences some of these interactions. So I'll give you a second just to think about that. And I want to acknowledge that us as the district at CMSA, every single decision that we make affects tens of thousands of kids, not only parents, clubs, coaches, but the kids and the human that's at the center of it. So, okay, enough of me yammer yammering a little bit. I actually want to back up for 1 sec. I'm going to do 2 polls here back to back, okay? No, actually, I'm going to do 1 poll there. So on your screen right now, you should have a poll, and you should be able to see it. So around this slide, so how do you believe your club and coaches select players? What's the primary criteria for your club or coaches to select players for teams or tiers? And if you just want to select one of those options, and then at the bottom of that, there's a submit option, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how clubs, how coaches, how parents are perceiving their children are being tiered and placed into teams. So I'll give you say 25 more seconds. The votes are flying in, by the way. Love it. 17 out of 25 people already in. Where's the other 8? There must be 8 that are just watching Dancing with the Stars or something tonight. Just have this on in the background. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 seconds. If you haven't gotten in, we're up to 19 out of 25, 2, 1. Awesome. Going to end it there. 20. Someone got in right at the buzzer there. So I'm going to share the results with you. Everyone chose skill. This is crazy. I really thought someone would choose something else, but purely based on skill. Purely based on skill. Interesting. Very, very interesting. And so we are on the extreme end of this, but Canada Soccer did an LTPD survey, and they found that 50% of U9 to U12 coaches said skill was how they selected their players. 50%. We said 100. So it's purely just based on skill. subjective and perceived skill right now that puts your child into a tier. And there's a comment that's come through the chat box. It's not purely based on skill, but that's the main one. Agreed. I'll go with that. The main criteria is based on skill. So they get tiered, and then resources typically in your club is allocated towards that tier. And all of the research around talent identification, talent development, talent selection shows absolutely no correlation between skill and performance at ages 9 to 12 and elite level performance. So why do we continue to do it this way? Why do we continue to allocate resources this way? Why do we continue to choose teams and tiers this way? Because the traditional model of selecting a number of players based on their performance levels at a specified time, organizing them into a team, and then competing against other teams is flawed in these ways. One, doesn't actually accurately predict potential or future performance. Two, often turns away players who might have high potential, but who are simply inexperienced at that moment relative to their peers. Maybe they just haven't been playing soccer that long. Maybe their developmental age is far younger than what their peers are. But we're saying, no, you're not good. You go play over here. Early selection prior to physical maturation, so prior to puberty, implies early exclusion of the majority and can discourage players who might otherwise become as good or better if given the time and chance to develop. And lastly, the characteristics that define talented athletes, and again, air quotes are used and quotes on the screen, in early age are not the characteristics that define elite athletes later in their career. So if we think about this and dialing it back to that mental, social, emotional corner and that pillar underpinning everything that we do, what is actually best for the player? What's best for the person? What's best for the child at the end of the day? And so this is kind of the expectation, I think, of everyone that gets into sport. We start them at your U4, your Timbits. They run around, they put a ball in a goal wherever, and we think that they just keep getting better and better and better in a linear fashion. There's a constant progression, a defined beginning and end. But what we know is that this is more the reality. It's non-linear. And that's why there's a whole section of coaching research and coaching education based around non-linear pedagogy, how we actually teach in non-linear environments. And players will go forward, backwards, sideways, all over the place. And there's no real defined endpoint until they just hang up their boots and say, you know what, Mom, you know what, Dad, I'm good. I'd rather play Fortnite because Fortnite is awesome, I hear. So I think part of this is there's a mismatch. There's an adult perception sometimes that we exist on the left, that it's linear, that we can get people from A to B within a predetermined amount of time. But the reality is we just exist on that right-hand side. And so I want to launch just another quick poll. And I love the engagement of the last one. So please, if you could keep that up, that would be amazing. And it's just based around, what's the primary or most important reason that you've registered your child in soccer? You can only pick one answer, and I've done this deliberately. So again, if you could choose one and scroll to the bottom and hit submit, it would be great. So 14, 15 out of 25, 17. I'm going to give you another 15 seconds for the last couple to finish reading and to put them in there. Oh, we've actually surpassed it. 21 out of 25. Should I end it now? All right, the last four clearly have fallen asleep. So I'm going to end the poll now. And I want to share the results. This is awesome. First off, whoever put "they nagged me so much I couldn't say no anymore," amazing. We need to see who this child is because that's incredible. Love that. But it all centers around encouraging lifelong physical fitness and health, and to give opportunities to learn life lessons through sport. We didn't sign them up to become pros. We didn't sign them up to become university players. We didn't sign them up because we played. I mean, that might have had some influence on it. But these are the key and core bits that foundationally need to be put at why we're doing everything that we're doing. So if that's the reason why you've done it, we need to facilitate that and make sure that that happens. Pardon me. So I'm going to stop sharing that. Thank you very much for taking part in those couple of polls. I appreciate that very much. So what you've all alluded to, and this is straight from the research as well. So positive youth experiences and outcomes come through sport. And we know this: physical development, they get bigger, stronger, faster, their cardio increases, their agility, their balance, all of those things increase. Their psychological and emotional development. They learn how to problem solve. They learn how to work together in a team. They learn how to deal with winning, losing. They learn how to do a lot of different things there. Their social development, they work in a team. And then intellectually, there's actually studies shown that following athletic endeavors or athletic events, that your academic performance actually increases as well. Amazing. Sport is fantastic for us. And the key factors that are contributing to positive and negative experiences and outcomes through sport are purely around program design. So what we do, what your club does, and then the adult influences within that. So the parents and the coaches. Of course, there's referees, there's administrators, there's all these others, but the two key ones are parent and coaches. So you're valuable, unbelievably valuable in your kid's life. And some of the bits that are features of positive developmental settings are around physical and psychological safety. And that is a key component, that if you do that incorrectly, that sport programs are intimidating and frightening, that they're the appropriate structure as well, that there's clear, consistent, age-appropriate delivery, and there's appropriate adult supervision within it. In other words, qualified coaches that know what's going on and know how to develop young people, develop humans. And the third and fourth kind of go together, but there's something there to work towards in terms of having supportive relationships and having opportunities to belong, is to get together and become part of a community. And the last four are around positive social norms. So how society ideally should operate. Not the typical, very masculine, aggressive, competitive model of sport, the gladiator type model that we see, on the silver screen. The support for efficacy and mattering. Everything has to be child-centered and promote the empowerment, autonomy, and some opportunities to experience challenge. This has to be present within our program and within your club program. And of course, opportunity for skill building through appropriate developmentally appropriate program design and coaching. And then lastly, if we can integrate family, school, and community efforts, we've got a phenomenal environment. And so this piece of research is a key underpinning of why we've gone through these modifications, because we feel that this new offering actually brings together all of those pieces for the benefit of the children. And I hear a lot about, well, how does this model affect the talented kids, the gifted kids, the competitive kids? And I use air quotes around that because those words are from an adult model. But the realities is that children compete and adults compare. So as you can see on the image on the left, the little boy with a basketball is in socks. The other one's in jeans. That's the key essence of sport. It just brings people together and they compete. They don't want to lose. I guarantee you, they don't know what the score is maybe. There's no formal scoreboard. There's no fans. There's no nothing, but they compete. So competitive people compete and kids are competitive. And so when we talk about competition and being competitive, we often see competition as the role of master. And thus, it doesn't actually serve the athlete in their long-term development. It's all to do around the training environment. It's all to do around what the athlete actually does on their own. And I love this quote by Johan Cruyff. He trained 4 hours a week at Ajax as a boy, but he played about 4 hours a day in the street. Where do you think he learned how to play football? And I want to take you on a quick journey. If we want to talk about best practices and what the journeys of some of the top players around the world are right now, and steal some things from around the world, I want to take you on that just quickly. This is Erling Haaland, Borussia Dortmund player, Norwegian international. He's just had a price tag put for his services to play on your team of only 180 million euros. So if you can scrape that together, you can bring him in. And so I want to take a quick look at what his developmental journey was, because he's very in vogue right now, one of the top players in the world, and is like a rocket ship. So he actually played for his home club until age 16 in his local village. And you can look up this village in Norway. It's not massive. Indoor and outdoor facilities were kept open for spontaneous play. Kids could just go and play, just like they can at the neighborhood soccer fields here. And football, or soccer, was conceived as a social environment for learning during development as both a person and player. So rather than saying we need to make this person the best player, it was, let's just have a social environment and enjoy our time together. He was 2000 born, but played up with the 99s. And at age 9, this blew my mind when I found this. They had one structured training session per week. That's it, one. How does a world-class player get developed in one training session per week at age 9? They must be doing something right in Norway. At age 15, the players are given the choice to either train 4 times a week or 2 times a week. And it's purely the player's choice, what stream they want to go into. And I love this as well, that the training group actually consisted of 39 boys and 1 girl. So whoever that one girl was, or that one young woman, very brave. But from this group, not one of them retired before the age of 16. So retention rates were through the roof, which is a key priority for Calgary Miners soccer. And there were 5 national team players and 10 pros came out of it. So if we want to talk about what we're doing currently in not satisfying the elite stream, but also not satisfying the retention grassroots stream, well, clearly they've done something right over at Bern. And apologies if I've mispronounced that. If there's any Norwegians in the house, I apologize. Next, I wanted to take a quick look, a little more local. I'll be quicker, I promise. This is Jordan Heidemann. She's a young woman who's shot off like a rocket ship in terms of her journey. So she was born in Chilliwack, BC, another smaller center. Very odd. She actually played and trained in a boys' team growing up. She played up a year in Surrey United. When she was seen at a tournament, she got signed there and played in the BC SPL and was almost immediately put into the BC Rex program. Again, the Rex program is that female national team pathway program. So she started by living in Chilliwack, and they would commute an hour and a half each way. You can imagine spending 3 hours in the car every night with your teenage daughter, trying to scarf down some food, do homework, etc. Not easy. Jessie Fleming's journey was very similar to this, but then she was later billeted, and she actually left early to go to PSG. So quickly, I'll give you a couple more. Deanne Rose, again, phenomenal player. She grew up playing in a small club in Bradford, Ontario. I'd never even heard of Bradford, Ontario until I connected with Joey Lombardi about this story. It was a local community club, and she stayed there until she went full-time into the Rex program. She's part of a regional training setup within Ontario, and then eventually made her way into the provincial program. There's youth national team ID camps, and there's one usually in the east and one in the west. And she wasn't selected for the 15s. And then immediately afterwards, the Ontario Rex got shut down. And she actually had to go back to her local club environment. But she found a pathway. She figured it out. She stayed in the game. She stayed with it. And she played senior women's. Her club coach called Joey Lombardi, who was the Rex director at the time. Joey dragged his backside out to go and watch her, and she scored 4 goals in the game. Immediately picked up the phone and said, I think I've got one. 2 weeks later, she was in a U17 camp. And then 2 weeks after that, she was in the full women's national team. It happens that quick for some of them. Alfonso Davies, we all know Alfonso, local Albertan example. He's a refugee. His family immigrated to Canada and settled in Edmonton. He played for his local club with his peer group, just his friends from school, whatever club was closest to him in Edmonton. And after he was identified through Free Footy and St. Nick's Academy, he eventually got scouted by FC Edmonton, the Vancouver Whitecaps. He went out to Vancouver 3 different times before he stuck, before he was deemed socially, mentally, emotionally ready to actually leave home. And he's been sold to Bayern Munich, which his career has gone off like a rocket ship as well. And he was in the FIFPro Men's World 11 this past year. So the best 11 players in the world on the men's side. And lastly, Kadisha Buchanan. So she grew up again playing in a small local club in Ontario. Rams United, it's called. You can look it up. They're not massive. She's part of a regional training program. She goes to the regional tournament, and that's where they select their provincial team in from Ontario at the time. She actually played as a number 9. She was a center forward, but if anyone's watched any of the women's national team games, they'll tell you she doesn't play there now. She came back a year later to that same tournament, played as a center back, and her career went again. So I guess, what's the point? Yeah, what's the actual point in sharing some of these stories? Because you said, well, I want to hear the why. I want to have a go at Jordan tonight. I want to understand why these changes and why these modifications are happening. So what is the common thread here between all of these players? Well, 1, there's some struggle. 2, they stuck with the game. And 3, they all lived by this principle, by playing for their local club and sticking with the local club as quickly as possible, for as long as possible. And then as quickly as possible, they moved through the ranks when they were ready. They weren't all ultra elite, mega superstars at 8, 9, 10 years old. But they had a love of the game, and they played, and they fostered that love to turn it into something for themselves. So I'm going to pause there, take a quick sip. And that's kind of the underpinnings of the why. Putting lifelong friendships, putting health and wellness, putting positive sport experience, putting life lessons at the foundation of why these modifications have been made. And these are the exact same reasons that you've outlined as to why you've put your children into the game, which thank you very much for doing that. I want to talk about this now, the what. So what are we actually going to be doing? And it's based under this global principle of live local, play local. You don't need to drive 45 minutes across the city to get to another club, because I guarantee you there's a great one within walking distance of you or within a 5 or 10 minute commute. I guarantee you there's one. There's 40 odd clubs operating in Calgary right now. There has to be one close to you. And if there isn't, we will help you find one. So the U7s to the U9s, they're going to be moving into a quadrant-based festival match day, which some of you know a lot about, some of you don't know a lot about. So we've divided the city up into 4 quadrants: the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southwest, Southeast. And what we're doing is we're grouping clubs based around where their registration and where their members come from. So for example, if you're with Chinooks, you would likely be on one of those West Side quadrants. We're just finalizing who's going where, and we'll make sure to get that information out. But we really, really, really wanted to focus on shortening drive times to matches. So the absolute maximum is 20 minutes each way. And as this rolls out, that's going to get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Where, in my opinion, I want to have matches 10 to 15 minutes from everyone's home. So we could walk there as a family if we really wanted to, right? So this is where we want to be going. And we're going to have open rosters for these. So open rosters is a concept where your club has the ability to group players however they see fit. And there's a concern that I'll get to later in this presentation, but the open roster concept essentially says, great, at the match day, if we need to move a couple of players, not we as Calgary Minor, but your club, if they think that they should move into a different group or we should swap groups because the games aren't meaningful, they're not the right level, they're not helping the players, they do that. They do it in the best interest of your child and in the best interest of the player. So we're trusting those experts that are in the clubs to be able to do that. And we're also moving into a small-sided game format of 3v3 and 4v4 games. And I know that there's a concern around that, so we'll get into that shortly here. But it's based around playing time. It's based around love of the game. It's based around touches. It's based around time on the ball. It's based around scoring goals, which fuels enjoyment, which fuels intrinsic motivation, which fuels confidence and self-esteem and belief. That's what we want. That's how we'll get retention in the game. And this is going to foster a sense of community and connection, because a sense of community is necessary. And it's necessary to establish a social climate to motivate children to develop. And the competitive nature of sport can undermine that sense of community, especially in youth leagues. That's why we're not using scores and standings. There's absolutely no benefit to having scores and standings. There's no benefit to having wins and losses by massive margins. So we don't want that. No one wants that. We want meaningful competition and meaningful games all the time. So now you all helped me build this presentation a little bit by some of your questions to begin with. So thank you. I appreciate that. And some of the concerns over the modifications were around this. Why are we doing this now? Like, this seems crazy. With all the upheaval in the world, why are you doing this now, Jordan? Why are you doing this now, CMSA? And at the end of the day, this massive disadvantage of not having kids on the field and coaches coaching and refs reffing has actually allowed us to pump the brakes, say, hold on, are we actually doing what's in the best interest of the player, of the person, of the child? And we evaluated, we realigned to where things are going in sport and in soccer. We researched, now we're implementing, again, back to that process that I mentioned at the beginning, all to foster a love of the game. I love this one. I absolutely love this one, because these modifications are a waste of time for talented players. Where is the value for competitive U9s? All players will receive value. I'll personally guarantee it. And the beautiful part about this is that Calgary is such a small soccer community that if this is screwed up, it's on me, it's on CMSA, and I'll bet you probably won't see me again because no club will hire me. So don't worry, if I screw it up, I'll put my hand up and I'll leave. And then I'll go screw it up somewhere else. But I'm this confident that there is meaningful matches for every single child in this model. And I wanted to really touch on this. The competitive and talented words shouldn't be used. And I'm just going to be brutally honest with you. They're just more developmentally advanced. They might be more physically advanced. Their mindset could be a bit different. But the images at the bottom, and I'll translate that code, play back into this, because this model is actually going to produce better players over time, I believe. Because if you increase the time on the ball and you increase decision making, you can increase love of the game, and then you get improved development as a collective. And it's one of those adages that as the sea rises, so do all ships. So that's what we're doing, is we're actually raising the sea so all ships rise. Because we don't just cater to the talented, to the competitive, to the gifted, to the elite, to all of these ridiculous words. We cater to all the players. We need to do what's best for all the players. So there's some concerns about the impact that these modifications will have on the players. And what we've been able to do is give children an age and stage appropriate playing environment to allow expression, creativity, and development to flourish. And then retention, confidence, all of these other benefits we will see. And we're also allowing the clubs to be flexible in how they develop the players and encouraging them to put the needs of each individual child first, not teams, individual children. which for me, if I'm going to put my son into soccer, that's what I want. I don't care what his team does. I care what he does and what's in it for him. And the impact here can be seen with this. So this was a study done by Manchester United, and it was a 4v4 pilot scheme that they did. So they had these young kids. They used to play them 8v8 match format, which is not so dissimilar to what the U9s were playing in terms of a 7v7 format. They moved them into a 4v4 with the aims of what you can see on the screen. So they wanted individual possession. They wanted new skills tried in a psychologically safe environment. They wanted 1v1 activity. They wanted kids to go at defenders. They wanted no pressure from significant others. Sorry about the spelling mistake. They wanted a vibrant, creative, fun atmosphere. This is how this is going to happen, through community, through bringing people together. So what they did is they did a quantitative analysis and a qualitative analysis. So they tracked the number of passes, scoring attempts, goals, 1v1 encounters. We'll move on. This was the data. And as you can see, there was different game formats that they went through. So that left-hand column, a 2-goal game, no goalkeepers. You defend 1 goal, you attack another goal. A line game. So you dribble or pass over a line to score. It was just a box that they played in. No actual, 3 sticks in the ground to make a proper goal. A goalkeeper game. So we put goalkeepers in. And then a 4-goal game where you defended 2 goals and you attacked 2 goals. And then they compared it to 8v8. I'm not a brain surgeon. I've headed a lot of soccer balls in my life. But I can see just from looking at this that there is massive benefit to moving away from 8v8, especially at developmental ages, and moving into 4v4, 3v3, getting kids on the ball, staying on the ball, owning the ball for as long as humanly possible. And I love this. There's 500% more goals scored. Want to know what makes me feel good when I play? Well, kicking people, tackling people, heading the ball, organizing a team. But I'm one of those freaks that was a defender. You ask loads of them, what puts a smile on a kid's face when they're playing? Scoring a goal, right? And then we talk about the decision-making, the technical, the tactical, everything around that is the 1v1, the dribbling skills, the passing, the scoring attempts. Everything is increased. And even with their survey, they received 80%, 68, and 75% positive comments from club directors, coaches, parents, and players. So everyone actually enjoyed it. And the top positive comments from the parents were it was actually more enjoyable than 8v8. There was less emphasis on winning than when it was 8v8, and that 4v4 improves techniques more. And the top negative comments, and I love these, they viewed the 4v4 games as less competitive than 8v8. But the mindset was completely different with the coaches and the club directors, that they actually said, no, these are very competitive matches at 4v4. And then, of course, there were some players didn't understand it. So maybe the why behind it, some of the rules, the nuances in the formats. So there was some understanding there. Or some lack of understanding there, some confusion. So that is likely going to be the impact on the players. That shows that it should be quite good. Another concern was around breaking up teams will have a detrimental effect on kids. And we're not breaking up teams. I want this to be very, very clear. CMSA is not saying that the rosters need to be chopped and changed every single week. We have said, or we've put out some criteria around a couple of the festivals will be clubs basing their teams around social relationships. So if you were to ask the kids, hey, make your own team or find 4 friends, good, there's our group, bang, go put them in. Find some friends, bang, go put them in. And that's the way that we can make progress. That's the way that we deeply invest people in staying with the game, because soccer is an individual game played in a team environment. And that if we start to group them based on mixed ability rather than like with like ability, we actually raise the standard for all of them. and can still produce some good players, because all of those developmental journeys are successful that I showed earlier, those 5 players. And that success leaves clues. And those clues are, you don't need to be in the best team all the time. You don't need to be the U9 mega elite tier 1, yada, yada, yada. You just need to show up and play. Good. So moving on, the next concern was around competition is the cornerstone of development. By eliminating competition, our kids won't develop or learn how to win or lose. So there's actually no evidence through any of the research. And if someone's got some, send it to me, please, and I will eat my words. But there's no evidence that competition is the key factor in development. The environment that's created by your coach, by your club, by positive relationships, through positive team relationships, through fueling intrinsic motivation. That's where development happens. And I asked the question to everyone then, when do people actually need to learn to win and lose? At what age is that appropriate? At what age does that need to become a priority? So if you've got some ideas, chuck it into the chat box. I'll give you 10 seconds, throw in a number. If you've got an inkling, what age do you feel that we need to be making sure kids win and lose? And I see a question in the chat here. Don't worry, I will get back to that at the end. All right, come on. We all participated in the polls. Give me some love in the chat box here. Someone's going to say 3 years old. I know it. Oh, there's one, 10 with a question mark. Okay, 10, maybe. I like that. Kids learn to win and lose pretty early on. Totally agree. Totally agree. And oftentimes it's the example that we as adults and coaches set for them. Someone said 14. Cool. Okay. I'm gonna close that down there. 17. Love that. Really, really old. Holy smokes. If there's any of them left by then, I hope so. And they learn in other situations before sports. Love that. How about playing like Monopoly with their older siblings and family on a Friday night, or Pictionary, charades, I don't know, Fortnite, whatever else they play. Yeah, they learn to lose well before sport. But what some of the research suggests, and this is straight from long-term player development, that's what LTPD stands for, is that it's in and around stage 4, and that training to train stage. And the age groups there you can see on your screen are U11 to 15 for the females and U12 to 16 for the males. And this is when we start to become deliberate as coaches and putting these things into the mental corner of development and trying to give them tools, or trying to encourage them to have tools to deal with winning and losing. This is not at 6, 7, 8, 9 years of age. So I'll hit pause there, because that's been a lot. It's been heavy. I've got 5 minutes of your time left, and I still want to save a little bit for questions, but I want to put this kind of quote up on the screen here quick. So I love this. I love this. I found this a long time ago, and it has stuck with me. So if your objective is to turn them into champions, the odds are that you're wasting your money and time and your child's happiness. Sports are metaphorically littered with the scarred psyches of children whose parents tried and failed to do what Earl Woods and Richard Williams succeeded at doing. That's Tiger Woods' dad and Venus and Serena Williams' father as well. And you can look them up. They're a different breed, that's for sure. Your goals as parents are for your children to have fun, learn life skills, to succeed later in life, value health and fitness, and develop a deep love of sports. If by some freak chance you've given them world-class athletic genes, they love sport enough to work incredibly hard, they get the right kind of support from you, and they become a professional or Olympic athlete, that's icing on the cake. And you've all identified it through that poll that what is important is purely around those life lessons, around the exposing them to a little bit of struggle, the making new friends, the social interaction of sport. So I'm just reading something in the chat box here as well. I'll get to that. Great comment in the chat box. Don't think anyone can see it, but I'll touch on this. So again, how do we support the children in the return to sport? Because it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. It's coming soon. It has to. This whole COVID thing is taken off. I think there's 2 P's. One is patience. Yeah, we need to focus on the process and measure results for your child over the span of years and months rather than what they do on a match day. Right? Really, really vital. And I think the key piece is to compare progress against past versions of themselves, not against their peers, not against kids on the other team, but against themselves. Because at the end of the day, it's a kid's game and this is not adult sport. And lastly, you can look up what SMART goals are online. There's loads of them, but it stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely goals with your child. And there's loads online about SMART goals. And the second P is positivity. We can all be excited about what's going on, even if we're a little unsure. I'm even unsure. I'm not 100% sure that this is going to be completely flawless and there's going to be no mistakes. But what we all have is one thing in common, and that's that we all want what's best for the child. Between parents, between CMSA, between coaches, between clubs, we all do this for the kids. And that is always a common thread behind all of these chats. And so I'll leave you with this. A little bit lighthearted, because I know sometimes I can be a bit of a downer. And for those on the call that have worked with me probably know that I get a bit grumpy here and there. But CMSA essentially started on the left-hand side of that Dilbert comic. It just says, we're hiring a director of change management to help employees stabilize or embrace strategic changes. Dilbert says, or we could come up with strategies that make sense, then employees would embrace change. And that's actually harder. That's where we're at. We've got all of this evidence. We've got all of this research. We're doing logical things. It's hard to make these changes. And then the last piece is a man with new ideas is a madman until his ideas triumph. And I'm not saying that I'm egotistical enough to think that these ideas are going to triumph. But what we've done is we've built these together with the clubs. We've been deliberate about how we've done this. We've taken a lot of input and feedback from them as well. And we, as a Calgary soccer collective, operate on that left-hand side far too often. We go in different directions, from clubs to parents to kids to this to that to the next thing, that we need to start pulling in the same direction, or at least, at the very least, a similar direction. Because that's how we're going to keep kids engaged, develop great athletes, and develop even better people through soccer. So I'll end there. I'll leave my contact information up on the screen. There's a couple of bits in the chat box here, and I'll start with a couple of these questions here. So the question came in: what is the size of field and nets for U9? So the size of field, and the clubs know this already, the size of fields are going to be 15 yards wide by 20 yards long. Don't quote me on this right now, but I will make sure that that information is coming out that's 100% accurate. That might tweak a little bit for the U9s, but we're just working through that right now. But that's kind of where we're basing things, is to keep it a little tighter, to have 3v3 or 4v4 games in the appropriate size field, and then to make sure that they spend loads of time on the ball. We're also might be tweaking a couple of things with the U9, so I don't want to commit myself too much to that, but there's been some great club feedback, and we're working together with them. And then the next question around it is, are there referees? No, we're not going to have referees. We're talking about 6, 7, 8-year-olds. We're talking about having coaches there that should have an understanding of the rules of the game. Clubs should be empowering them with that. And we've got adult leaders there to ensure that kids sport is delivered like kids sport. And this might sound a bit odd, but, and especially given the times, but we have to unsanitize the game a little, and unprofessionalize the game a little bit. It's a must. There's another question. Will games have CMSA referees? How will it be organized? Will CMSA put out a schedule of who plays who each weekend? How will parents know who they're playing each day and at what time if they're on a different team each weekend or festival day? I know, crazy, right? What we're aiming to do is to have one match day hub in that quadrant where all the games will take place. And now don't hold me to this. We're just building it out right now. This is largely dependent on how many groups enter and how many groups per club kind of enter. But we would look to have a consistent time for, say, the U7s, the U8s, and the U9s. So you knew on Saturday morning, if you had an 8-year-old boy, that they were playing from noon till 1:30, say. And again, don't hold me to that, but that's where we're going, is to have consistency in schedule to allow for families to plan, to be able to be there and such. In terms of the scheduling piece, CMSA is going to set a starting schedule. But as I've said, if there's multiple groups from the club there, entire groups can change to have meaningful competition, or you can take 2 or 3 players from here, move them into another group, take 2 or 3, just to make sure that kids are getting the appropriate developmental activities, and from a 4-corner or from a mental to fueling the other kind of perspective. I hope that this is answering the questions. Another question is, how many games will they be playing on festival weekends? We are finalizing that right now. I concocted a model that had some holes in it, so I had 2 other people look at it, and they've come up with a better model. So the total game time has actually increased compared to the normal league offering that the players would have gotten. So clubs, parents, everyone's actually getting more bang for their buck, and they're actually getting a little bit more in many games. The next question is around, why is it every 2 weeks instead of every week? So it's every 2 weeks purely to allow families to have some social time. We're actually giving a little bit more in terms of minutes, and we can do that by spreading it out a little bit longer across those festivals. And we've done it deliberately because, one, we want to make sure that families and kids have the ability to come in at a late stage in the summer if there's concerns about COVID and things of that nature. And 2, we want to also acknowledge that we can't really travel internationally too much right now. So we expect that families will likely be camping, be traveling around locally. And so we want to free up some time and make sure that socially these kids can connect with their family as well, rather than hammering them every single week. They'll get weekly games soon enough, I promise you that. But right now, every other week is loads for them. Next question is, will this festival style soccer be moved into U10 and U11 in the years to come, or will it end in U9? Can I leave that as wait and see? Like tune in next week kind of? No. So the answer is should this be successful? Should this be a model and a way of delivering this? Then yes, it will continue to roll out U10, U11, all the way up to U12, because a lot of the Canada Soccer Club licensing requirements are centered around having these open rosters and having districts and league operators have flexible delivery in that. So yes. The next question is, how will this transition into indoor? Don't worry, we're working on it. And we will make sure that this is doable in both outdoor and indoor. I've already cooked up the indoor model. Guaranteed there's some holes in it, so it's being refined a little bit, and we will get that information out to you. Probably mid-summer is when you can expect that. And I should also say, for this outdoor, there's a massive guidebook coming with all of the information that's going to be sent out to clubs, to coaches, to parents, so that you can review this and we can be completely transparent with what we're doing. The next question is, how are these games coached? Are they provided by the club? Yeah, that process doesn't change. The club provides the coaches for the groups. The details around that are just being hammered out. So I'll leave it at that. But yes, coaches are still being supplied by the clubs. Kids are not being put into a massive pot and then mixed up when they get there. You've got a club. You might even have a team. Good. All we're asking is that team forms 2 little groups and away we go. Right. Holy smokes, loads of questions. I guess I did too much talking and not enough listening during the whole presentation. Will the quadrants be based on the actual club registration or where the club is registered? So where the registrations come from, where their members are located, that's more important than which quadrant that they appear on in our website and in our system. So for example, Club XYZ is registered in the Southeast, but lots of their players, or say 70% of their players, come from the Northeast. Their games will be in the Northeast because we want to really, really embody that live local, play local principle. A thank you. That's the second thank you. So I appreciate that. I'll come back to that. How many games do they play at the festival? We're just hammering out those final details, so we'll get that out to you right away. Why the move away from weekly games? I think I've kind of covered that. Flexible rosters. The games were highly motivating for our kids. I anticipate that these games will be highly motivating, and if they're not, well, I'll eat my words and we can revisit that. Can players join in the summer only? Don't see why not. You can register with your club whenever you like. There's a question around when will CMSA open up the indoor soccer centers for free play indoors, considering we have snow outdoors and this is not possible 8 months of the year. Amazing question. And it's something that I will write down because I'm saving the chat and I'll review. It's a great question. But when? Couldn't tell you. And I'm sorry that I can't give you a date or a timeline, but that's it. What COVID protocols will be taken? Oh, wait 1 sec. For some reason, it just skipped to the bottom. My apologies. Bear with me. Is it safe for kids to be moving from team to team? Again, this is the utopian lens. This is life's good. There's no cohorts. There's no COVID. We've worked out a plan B, plan C into how we can facilitate a model like this with kind of some restrictions, but it's going to be largely dependent on what Alberta Health Services and what the Alberta government restrictions are like at that time. Another question. The U9 kids have already had a taste of the traditional model. Why shift them after making this step up? So I believe that they've made the step up for indoor, which consisted of all of 2 games. There might have been some in outdoor, which also didn't consist of a lot of games. So why? Well, I hope that that's been answered in the presentation, the why, because it's a more age and stage appropriate. It allows for flexibility in the player development model. It allows for kids to be grouped based on how they want to be grouped, not based on perceived skill. So I guess I hope that's a little bit of the why. And there's a question here that just says goalies ? Yeah, something we're exploring. As I said in the presentation, if you want to put a smile on a kid's face that's playing, they score goals. And granted, yes, it's harder with a goalkeeper, and I'm sure that there's a lot of mega talented, elite, competitive kids out there that need to score against a goalie. What about all of them? So will there still be tiers for U9? Absolutely not. No tiering. We will work to ensure that players have meaningful competition every single festival day and every single match in conjunction with their clubs. Are you going to require coaches to be NCCP trained at these ages? Given our timelines right now, we would expect that clubs would be helping to support coaches enroll in the appropriate NCCP course. And NCCP is a National Coaching Certification Program. They're all for free right now. So clubs, if you're on the line, I would be pushing through the information that I've emailed out to you a couple of times and ensuring that you're following up with the coaches of these age groups to ensure that they've done fundamentals, that they've done learn to train, and that they are really, really prepared. Another thank you, great session, excited for the changes, definitely moving in the right direction. I've got one ally, get in, I'll take that. How many teams will be on the same field? Thinking of parking COVID numbers. We've selected venues that have reasonably good parking. And I say reasonably good because this city, for some reason, does not build their facilities amazing for large group gatherings. So places with 2 or 3 fields might have poor parking, but we've tried to be really strategic about the places that we've chosen. We've tried to make sure that they're on transit lines to help out players and families that might have transportation challenges, because we want people attending this. We want these to become hubs of community, of interaction, of love, of support. That's what these match day hubs will become. COVID numbers, again, we'll figure that out when the time comes. Next question is, will the May to June and July-August sessions be included in one registration, or will they actually be separate signups, or will this be different for each club? I believe all clubs are kind of doing things a little bit differently. You'd have to check in with your club. What we didn't want to do is we didn't want to say you have to register all summer. Multi-sport athletes, there's a lot of research that supports having a multi-sport approach to athletic development. And if we say, okay, great, you're going to play all summer, you're going to play most of the fall and all winter, when does that leave time for any other sport? And also with COVID, we don't know what the restrictions will look like. So we've been flexible about how this rolls out. Some kids want to play in goal. Totally agree. That's why one of the match formats will have a goalkeeper. So we don't need to worry about that. Will clubs need to essentially double the amount of coaches? Does each group of 4, so I'll clarify a lot of this, get direct coaching is the question. I know clubs often have a hard time getting the number of coaches they need currently. Well, great question. There was 25 of us, 28 of us, I think, on the call. Please step up and coach. You don't need to learn how to kick a ball. I promise. If you put the mental, social, emotional corner first, and you put a ball out and you make sure that they're enjoying themselves and having fun, and then ask for support from your club, you'll likely have a pretty good experience. In terms of doubling the amount of coaches and groups of 4, so the minimum roster size will be 5 players and a maximum of 6 in order to maximize playing time while kids are there. So we don't want loads of subs. We don't want loads of kids standing around picking daisies, chasing butterflies. We want kids to play. You essentially pay for your kid to play soccer. We want them to play. So group size, min 5, max 6. Do we need to double the amount of coaches? My comment has been to the clubs, no, I don't believe we do, actually. I think that we can facilitate it in a manner where if a group of 12, that same U8 girls team, that same 12 players that you would have registered as a team and they'd have played 7v7 or whatever, that we can actually have them on side-by-side fields, and the coach becomes a facilitator rather than barking out orders and joysticking players around. They actually let the kids make decisions. They let them make mistakes, and they just facilitate the rules. They make sure that subs are going in when the ball goes out of play, or when there's a stoppage, etc., rather than shoot, pass to here, pass to there, and all of the other kind of instructions that coaches tend to be overzealous with. I think Manuel Pellegrini said it best, that the coach's job is 95% through the week, and the player's job is only 5% through the week. When it comes to match day, the player's job is 95% and the coach's job is 5%. So we need to make sure that coaches facilitate. It's a kid's game. Give them the game back. Next one, for the 4v4, will there be kids waiting to cycle in on the bench, or will games be shorter and just the 4v4s with no waiting players? Cycling in. We want them to play. We know that these kids can't play for an hour and a half straight, so there's going to have to be a sub and stuff, and a rotation kind of system for that. So we've put together those recommendations. The clubs have those. We're just refining those, and we'll make sure that that's in the guidebook that everyone can have a look at. The last question here is about, what about rainouts, since it's only every 2 weeks? Unbelievable question. Rainouts means too bad. No, I'm kidding. We are going to do our very best to either reschedule or to move, to combine. We will do our very, very, very best in order to make sure that all of these get played. Obviously, you know, I can't control the weather, I can't control the smoke, so we're going to have to see what that looks like come summer, and we will adjust. We'll make sure that it happens, because this is the step in the right direction, and this is the way that kids will enjoy the game. I see a question, will it be 90 minutes then? We're just sorting out those details. The parents ask more questions than the technical leaders do. You're far more engaged than some of the coaches and TDs and stuff, so I love this. Excellent presentation. Thanks so much for that comment. I appreciate that. Some elements are amazing and fill in some of the gaps of what kids are missing. Awesome. I've got 2 allies in the room. Phenomenal. I might be calling on you later. Can teams participate in traditional tournaments elsewhere, like for a traditional 77 game or tournament in Edmonton, for example? That is going to be solely dependent on health restrictions, health zone restrictions, and what that looks like at the time. So I can't comment on that, unfortunately, but yeah, it's going to completely depend on what that looks like. So what I'll do is I'm going to close it off there. Another thank you. I'm going to close it off and say thank you very much for attending. I want to really, 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 truly thank you for taking the time, because I know we've gone well over the time limit tonight. But thank you for being invested in your kids' soccer pathway, in their development, in their progression. And honestly, if you have any questions at all, or any concerns, anything, I know that there's been a couple of parents already on this call that have reached out before the call. Please, continue to interact. I've got no problem. Email works best for me. Please be patient with me. I've got a lot going on right now, but I will get back to you. And I'll make sure that your questions are answered, that if we have to have a phone call, no problem, we will do that. But I would ask you first to go through your club. Your club should have the information, and they should be able to answer some of the questions. I prefer not to interact on Twitter. I don't really get into a lot of heated discussions or anything like that, but email is the best for business. And if you want to see what I share, feel free to follow along on Twitter. So I am going to end that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Now you get my big ugly mug on your screen rather than that beautiful presentation. And if there's any other further questions, if someone wants to stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes, no problem. But I wish you all a great night. Thank you so much again, and thank you for bearing with us and the clubs through some of these unprecedented times. It's not easy working in sport right now. And I'm not looking for sympathy, just looking for understanding and patience. We will get them back on the field when it's safe to do so, and we'll make sure that it's done properly. So thank you. I appreciate it, and have a good night.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
You're welcome, Stu. Thank you. You're welcome, Jess.
Yep. If we have other questions, can I just give you a shout directly?
Sure. Yep.
I know that we had gone through some of this stuff before, just before we set up registration, but there was a lot of questions before that. So as you can see, I sent you quite a few.
Hey, that's no problem at all. That's what I'm here for, is to make sure that these get answered, and I can definitely connect with you. Just shoot me an email,
Sure.
and we can set up a time to connect.
Okay, sounds good. Can you throw your email in the chat to me?
Yes. Give me 1 second. I will do that. Oh, sorry. Disregard that. I hit enter at the wrong time.
Oh, good. Is Jay Stewart at Calgary Minor Soccer? Okay.
That's the one. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, dead easy.
Thanks. Perfect.
Great. Cheers, Jess.
Yep. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. So Matt and Z, Stu, I can hit stop.